for it. Yep.
Hi. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Airing It Out podcast. I am your host, Dustin Marion. Today, my guest is Captain Donald Lawson, sailor extraordinaire. What is going on, Captain?
Hey, what's up, Dustin? How you guys doing today?
I'm doing great, man. I see you in the background. Are you on a boat right now?
No. So no, if you look behind me, you see a fireplace and you see a little lake in the backyard, a hot tub. So my wife and I, we have a nice cabin up here in northern Ohio, and this is our home away from home, if you will. So no, not on the boat right now.
Nice.
I wish
I was
it
just checking because I just got back from the East Coast, but you're in Ohio. I thought you still were in your hometown of Baltimore. So I was going to say the weather hasn't been great on the East Coast.
Yeah. I miss home. I haven't been home for a while because of COVID and stuff. But hopefully get back home in the next few weeks and see our family and friends and get on the water and do some sailing and get some crabs. I miss crabs and seafood.
Yeah, no, that's you guys are known for that, right? Wedding Crashers, they know for football.
Absolutely, that's right. Crab cakes and football, baby.
That's
Baltimore Ravens. That's what we do.
Yeah, I know. Getting a little off track for a second. Are you a Baltimore Ravens fan?
Absolutely, that's right.
What do you think about Lamar's performance this season?
You know, he took a step back, probably more for fatigue more than anything else, because I mean, it's only his third, going on his fourth year, and you know, it's hard to play football, and it's hard to be a leader of a team. And people are watching film of you nonstop, studying you, and so he got hit with some stuff that he hasn't been hit with before, and so I think now he's experienced that. He'll come back next year with some new stuff, and I feel confident. I saw Pittsburgh just re-sign Ben Roethlisberger, so I'm grateful for that because it helps us out in Baltimore. And then from there, between the Bengals and the Browns, I'm not too worried about those guys. So if Baltimore can just maintain what they've been doing, we should be back in the playoffs again.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I really think that it's great for Lamar to have emerged as an elite player in the league. I also think it's important for us to have more diversity at that position. So I'm happy to see that we're able to have that, and him coming off of an MVP season was really good. And I'm sure they're gonna bounce back. They're coaching over there. Even Ozzie Newsome, they do great stuff in Baltimore.
Yeah. I mean, Baltimore has a good tradition. I mean, you take it back to the Colts when we had the Colts before they left. We've always had a blue collar, hard hitting franchise in Baltimore, and our tradition, our culture is hard work, and so that foundation, that system, is giving us good longevity, and I'm pretty sure long term we're going to be able to maintain what we got here. So I'm excited about next year. I think Lamar's going to take another step forward, and the Harbaugh guy, he's really good. Rashadi, the owner, they take good care of us as a city. So
I'm excited. Hopefully they could get him a couple more weapons. I think that's probably about the limitation for that team. They do have a couple of defensive free agents that they got to figure out who they're going to sign, but they always bring in guys and they always do good stuff.
Yeah, we generally get 1-2 good years out of most free agents, and so wide receivers can be interesting. I know we have a couple guys. I mean, we're really short. We have really short wide receivers, and we need some height at that position, and we also need to get some more talent on the lines and stuff. So it's just hard. I mean, it's a lot of teams in the league, and when you have that many teams, the talent's going to be so dispersed everywhere, and so you got to have the right players at the right time and maximize the opportunities. So just hope for the best, and I'm always going to be a Ravens fan. If the Ravens were not in Baltimore, I probably wouldn't even follow football. So I am a Baltimore Ravens fan.
That's awesome. Are you also a Baltimore Orioles fan?
You had to go there. Yes, I'm a fan. I'm a fan, but it's a little different. See, the Orioles, they've been struggling the last couple of decades. We had one playoff series. So I'm not going to go too far into it, show my age here. But back in '97, when we got cheated by the Empires and the Yankees, it's been kind of a spiral effect since then. And we've had a couple good seasons, but the big picture is that our scouting has to get better. Our players' talent needs to get better. Coaching needs to improve. I mean, baseball is probably the most difficult of all the professional major sports to play because you can be an all-star if you hit the ball right, a third of the time. So imagine in life, isn't it crazy? I mean, imagine if I told you, "Hey, kid, take this test. If you get a third of the questions right, you're a superstar." I mean, that's how difficult it is.
Yeah, no kidding.
So the Orioles, that's our home team. The Ravens are really our regional team, and even the Capitals, Washington Capitals, we kind of take partial ownership of them as well. Investing in those guys, we love them. The Wizards have my favorite player on their team now, Russell Westbrook. So I'm very excited about that. He's been playing better over the last few weeks. So sports is a big deal over there.
Yeah, no, I could imagine. I find that interesting too because with Baltimore, right, and DC being so close, you guys kind of share some of the franchises together, and so there's kind of like a back and forth depending on what your interests are. But I was checking it out, part of some of the stuff that I wanted to dive into, and we'll circle back to the sports thing was, I didn't even know this, but checking out some stuff, you got Babe Ruth, who's from that area. You had Cal Ripken, that's from that area, and you don't really think about sailing as being technically, let's say, as a sport or breaking through, especially for you. I think I read an article where you found yourself interested or people were pushing you maybe to go to basketball. And, I'm from the inner city too. It's usually what they push us to. It's either basketball or baseball. Football now is coming up. But I wanted to ask you, what were some of the hurdles that you kind of went through going out of the norm of being in sports versus picking sailing over that?
Yeah. And again, I'm very transparent. So I'm very honest. So it wasn't that I wasn't pushed to play basketball and stuff. I just wasn't very good. Okay, so I could shoot the ball real well. I played defense, but I was more of a 3-and-D player before 3-and-D was a thing. And my siblings were great athletes. Some All-Americans, some All-County players. My dad was a good ball player too. And I had to find my niche. And so a long story short, basically, was I got to go sailing as a 9-year-old with the Living Classroom Foundation. And that got me on the water for the first time. I got to have freedom, and I got to steer a giant boat, 75-foot boat, as a 9-year-old. And while I was standing there, the captain was steering the boat, and I said, "Hey, Captain, how far can I take a boat like this?" And, he said, "You can take it around the world, technically." And I said, 9 years old, well, that's what I want to do. This is a sport. This is something I can do. And from there, kind of just took off from there. I mean, Baltimore is located on the Chesapeake Bay. And for those who are not familiar with the East Coast, Chesapeake Bay is like the largest inland body of water you're going to find. And it's a mixture of salt and fresh water called brackish. And the cool thing about it is that it's about 180 feet long from the canal down to Norfolk. And when you're in there, you have so much space, so many places to explore that you start feeling like you're in a different world. And when you compete in these events and these regattas, man, you get to see so many cool places. It's really awesome.
No, that's very interesting. I find it fascinating that at 9 you kind of found your way. I think a lot of people kind of have a hard time. Everybody tells you, "Hey, go to college and you figure yourself out there." But I think it's awesome that right out the gate you just felt this passion and you had the thought about trying to sell it around the world. I thought that was really, really cool.
Yeah. My personality, people who know me, my family and friends will tell you I'm a silly, fun, outgoing. I like to party, have a good drink, have a good time. But when it comes to life and direction, I'm a really, really focused individual. And so when I see something that I want or I see something that needs to be done, it gets done. And when I had an opportunity, when someone told me I could do a challenge that at the time had never been done before, because you got to remember, this is back in like 1989. And at the time, there had been no African Americans in the sport of sailing. And so there was no one for me to look at and say, hey, I want to be like that person. And ironically, 2 years later, Captain Teddy Seymour went around the world. And then a year later, Captain Bill Pinkney went around the world. But before that, you know, and so my imagination was fresh and new, and it was kind of, I'm going to call it original, but I saw it as an opportunity to do something that hadn't been done before. And that stayed with me since that time period, and everything I've done since then has been working to achieve that goal.
No, that's amazing. I was blown away that, like I said, at 9 you can put that together, and especially when you were saying that no one from the Afro American community had a presence in this sport, and for you to just not even see, be more, let's say, colorblind and limitless, and see something that potentially you thought that was capable of grasping is unreal. What, besides, I know you went to this program and they put you out, and then of course, driving a sailboat. You said 100-footer, right?
A 75-foot.
75. Yep. That's still pretty big for a 9-year-old
kid.
Yeah,
yeah.
It could have seemed like 200 feet.
Yeah.
After that day, looking at the open water, is that what attracted you to sailing, or what else attracted you to sailing? Was it the people in the community as well?
Yeah. So what attracted me to sailing was when I got onto the boat. There was a class of us. So I'd say, just for the sake of conversation here, 20 students. And when I got on the boat, my curiosity led me to leave the group and start exploring the boat. Now, granted, I wasn't supposed to do that. I was supposed to stay with the group, but I was pretty short at the time, so I was able to weasel my way out. But during that, I got to see the interior of the boat first. I got to see the bunks where the crew slept. I got to see the restroom on the head where they go to the bathroom. I got to see the galley, the kitchen where they cook it. And I realized at that moment, you could live on a boat. From there, I got to see the captain's quarters. And I got to see, at the time, it was an old IBM ThinkPad, but I got to see a computer, a laptop on the boat for navigation. And so what I realized is that this was a vessel that not only could I go on and have adventures with, I could stay permanently on board. And so what drew me into it was I had everything I needed on this boat, and the boat became home for me.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I'm over here in San Diego, and we have a bunch of different ports and stuff like that. And I've always been fascinated with the idea of like living on your home, and then you can leave, right, with your home, and you can travel. You can go to different places as long as you have, I guess, money for gas and money to port. You can literally go anywhere and stay anywhere. I thought it was one of the coolest things. I also felt like as a bachelor, it's got to be killer, right?
I can't confirm or deny that.
The ladies, they like the boats, I guess. I don't know. It's like a car thing.
Well,
tell me.
For the record, I am married to my high school sweetheart. And so we dated for 3 years in high school. We separated for about 10 years for college. Got back together about 12 years ago. And actually, our anniversary is coming up officially on Wednesday. And so the cool thing is that she loves the water. She loves being outside. One of the things that we first connected about was the ocean. So we've had many great charters, many great trips out there together. So it's really cool to be able to share that experience with her.
No, that's beautiful. I'm not so much of an outdoorsy guy, but it looks great. The sailing life seems to be awesome. Oh yeah. A little bit of like the pirate scene, you get to travel, conquer different places, show up somewhere in the Caribbean. I don't know. It seems to be amazing.
Yeah. Well, look at Star Trek. I always use that as a good example, where the Enterprise goes to different planets every single episode. And so what you can do with a sailboat is say, you know what, I'm going to explore the Caribbean. And I'm going to start from Grenada and work my way up to Bermuda. And hop island to island to island. And as you hop these different islands, each island has its own history, its own culture, its own food, which is part of culture, but foods, music, and you get to learn so much. And by the time you've done just that trip by itself in the Caribbean, you've probably been to 1,000 islands and met like 1,000 people or more.
So obviously you've sailed out of Baltimore and stuff. Where besides, let's say, the Caribbean, which I'm sure you've have visited and sailed to, where other
Yeah.
places have you sailed to?
Oh, all over.
Or where?
Yeah, the joke is always the only place I have not been is Antarctica.
I think you're good with that.
But yeah, but I spent months in Europe. I got to go to Africa for a while, the Mediterranean, the Caribbean, Canada,
And
the
sailing on
West
the same
Coast.
boat, sailing on the same boat, just going spot.
No.
No.
So in my career, it was very unique, and it kind of leads toward the record conversation as well, which is kind of cool. But I want you just to picture real quick the movie Karate Kid, and in that movie, the original Karate Kid, of course, the good one. And so in the original one, you have the instructor. I can't think of his name now, but the instructor has Danielson, Mr. Miyagi. Thank you. Miyagi says to Danielson, "I want you to paint this fence. Wax on, wax off, right?" And the kid starts doing it. He gets frustrated. Why am I painting a fence? This doesn't help me. And then he questions the instructor, says, "Why are you making me do this?" And he tells him, "Defend yourself and do this, do this." And then the kid realizes, he was training his muscles by painting. Okay, so sailing is the same way. And I didn't know at the time. I was just a college kid desperate for money. But what happened was I got an opportunity to start delivering boats. And what happens, most people who own their own boats don't have time or money to move the boat themselves. So they hire professional captains like myself to move their boats from, let's say, Nice, France to Barcelona, Spain. And they'll give us, a certain amount of money. So I need to go here about this date, get it there safely so I can have vacation with my family. Okay, so what I have to do then is sit there on the boat. If it's just me or if I have a team with me, I have to navigate a course from Nice to Barcelona. The key is that this boat's expensive. It belongs to someone else, and you're being entrusted with it. So the goal is to get the boat there as quickly as possible, but in safe conditions. And so what you do, you wait for the right weather system to push you from point A to point B. And so in doing that, you arrive at the destination, the owner's happy, and he gets your extra bonus. And then from there, you fly from there to the next destination, let's say it's in the Caribbean, and you do the same thing. And so we pretty much are mercenaries. And so now here's the tie-in to the Karate Kid thing. So doing deliveries like that is practice for doing records. The records are identical. So let's say I'm doing a record from Miami to New York. Well, I have a boat. I want to get the boat safely from Miami to New York. I have to wait for the right weather system, time it properly, and take off and go and get there as fast as possible. And so what's happening was I was working with an American legend named Bruce Schwab. He was the first American to finish the Vendée Globe around the world race. And he had this really fast open 16 boat. And he said, "Hey, I need help taking it from Portland, Maine down to St. Augustine, Florida." And so we take off. It was 3 of us on board. And we got to Charleston, South Carolina. And he said to me, and I quote, "I don't know what the world record is from Portland, Maine to Charleston, but we probably just broke it." And then it hit me. I'm like, oh my God, all this time I've been doing deliveries. I've been practicing records without even realizing. And so now when I compete, well, not now, but since I started competing back in the day, my mentality was always point A to point B, do it this way. And that's why I've been able to break records and be successful in racing.
That's awesome. So basically, it's more like points and destinations, right? And then when you're saying weather, are all of these sailboats, right?
Always sailboats. I don't do motorboats.
And so you always have to make sure that there's the right amount of wind. Is that what helps with the speed and how you doing
Absolutely. Yes. So everyone would think, the more wind, the faster you can go, which is not correct. Once you get to a certain wind strength, let's call it 35 knots, which is about 40 miles per hour winds. Always add pretty much 0.33 to get your knots in miles per hour. Anyways, and so 35 knots of breeze. Above that, you have to start slowing the boat down because the more pressure you put on the boat, the more likely you are to break the boat. And the stronger the winds, generally the stronger the waves. And so what happens is you want to try to find a sweet spot. Each boat is designed to operate inside of a wind range. And so most boats generally operate around 20 to 25 knots of breeze. That's kind of their sweet spot. And you also want the wind coming from a certain angle. So without being too yachty here, basically you want the wind coming off your side of your boat. So you put your arm out straight to your side, 90 degrees. That's, well, 180 this way, but 90 degrees from the front of you. That's what you want. You want to be on the beam reach majority of the time. And so what happens is if you can get the wind to be on that angle in the right wind range, you can maximize your speed over distance.
So I found it interesting when you were saying that you can potentially break the boat if you're going too fast. Once you start passing that 35 knots, do you start to slow down and kind of manage it a little differently?
Yes. So the real skill to being a great sailor is being able to manage inclement weather. And so what happens is as you're out there, you get your weather routing every 12 hours, sometimes every 6 hours, and you see what you have in front of you weather-wise. You see that the storm is coming or a tropical depression is coming, and you're like, okay, I need to position myself in this storm system when they arrive to maximize the wind angle, number one, and then the sea state, how big the waves are, and then the wind strength. And so sometimes in certain boats, you can't outrace the weather. Boats that I sail on, which are generally multi-hulls or really, really fast monohulls, we can go at the same speed or faster than the wind. And so it allows us to position ourselves to avoid the worst of the weather. Now, if you can't avoid it, you have to go through it. We reduce the amount of sail area we have up. So our main sails, we have generally 2 sails up at one time. What you do, you bring the sail down a percentage based on the strength of the wind. We call that reefing the sails. And so the key is to reef early and reef the right amount. Because if you reef too little, you slow down too much, and then you're at the mercy of the weather. If you reef reef too much, reef too much, you're too slow. You reef too little, you can break the boat still. So it's kind of like using a brake on a car.
And that's how violent it gets out there, that you could literally snap the sail in half?
Oh, yes. So I have done everything you can name on a boat. I have run aground, I have broken the mast, I have ripped sails, I've hit whales. It's when you're out, the more you sail, the more you're going to experience. And so, not everyone saw what's that movie, The Truman Show, where Jim Carrey at the end of the movie he's on a boat and he just takes off and goes. Everyone thinks that they can do that, and technically speaking, physically you can, but you shouldn't. Every profession requires a level of skill. So I can't do what LeBron James does on the basketball court. And LeBron James probably can't do what I do on a boat, type of thing. And so I think there's a level of professionalism that you need, a lot of training you need to properly do the job correctly and come home safe.
It's weird. I've been randomly watching some boat films, and I can't remember all of them off the top of my head. But like when you get into these crazy storms that you're trying to use to create momentum and speed to potentially maybe break a record or get there sooner or faster, do you ever get nervous about being like shipwrecked, or if you broke something in the middle of nowhere? I mean, I think the boat has kind of an engine, right? But you can't use it to get that far. Do you ever get
right.
Did you get scared or nervous earlier on in your career when you maybe crashed into the whale or messed up ripped it in half or whatever?
Yeah. So to be clear, most boats have auxiliary engines on board to help you get out of the marina support. Those diesel engines are now starting to become electric motor engines for environmental safety, and also because it's just better performance-wise as well. But no, you can't really use your motor very often in big sea states because it's just not strong enough to fight the waves or the current in certain parts of the world as well. And so when you're out there, you really are on your own unless you're in the fleet of boats. And so there have been plenty of times where I've been nervous or afraid. That's just part of human nature. I've seen waves the size of stadiums, and I'm not exaggerating. Like I was sailing the Gulf Stream, and if you're a sailor, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's a current that goes from pretty much Miami all the way up to Nova Scotia. It's a warm current, and when you're heading north, the current's with you. But if the wind's with the waves and the currents, the waves get gigantic. and I was sailing a boat, about 21-foot boat. It's one of the smallest boats I've ever sailed offshore, and I had to cross the stream. And funny joke in Ghostbusters, across the stream.
Don't cross the stream, man. You see?
Yeah,
I told you.
yeah. So across the stream, and these waves were massive. These are easily the biggest waves I've ever seen. And I was sleeping initially when the first wave hit me. And imagine a wave picking up in your bathtub, picking up, I don't know, a pencil and tossing it. And that's what happened to me on the boat. And so I flew. We call it getting mugged on the water, by the way. I got mugged by a wave, and I had to hand steer the rest of the way because I couldn't trust the computer, the autopilot, to steer at that point because I knew the boat couldn't handle it. And if I hit the wave the incorrect way, the mast will break, and then I'd be really stranded at sea. So I had to surf the wave, come up the wave as it approached, and then come back down with the wave. And so those are skills and techniques you learn from practice, also in education. And so an average person would have saw that and just probably freaked out, panicked, and probably would have gone back where they came from. But when you're out there, you have to depend on your training and your experience. And this is why most captains are generally older men or women who've been out there for a long time. You don't trust an experienced person with a multi-million-dollar boat or a sponsorship.
Yeah, no, that's pretty crazy. I can't remember the movie that was with George Clooney and Mark Wahlberg when they do see waves of that size, and you talk about
Perfect Storm.
Yeah, surfing it, which is interesting because usually you see in the movies they try to go over the wave, and that doesn't seem realistic.
Yeah. Right. So there was a movie, I'm not saying it was a good movie either, but there was a movie with The Rock called San Andreas Falls. I think it was.
Yeah, that's the one I was talking about. He tried to go over the wave.
Go over it. Yeah, and so as we're watching, I hate to admit this because my wife kills me on this all the time, but I critique movies that I see, and I see stupid things like that. So,
I agree. Me
too. So watching that movie, when I saw him doing that, I said to myself, okay, I know it's Hollywood, I know, but someone's going to see that one day and think that's the right thing to do. So, just my advice, people, when you're out there, when the waves get above the height of your mast, especially, what you have to do is the wave approaches, you're going to do what's called a trough. You have to come down like you're skiing, and then as the wave starts lifting you up, you turn with the wave. And once you clear the crest, the top of the wave, then you come back down and you repeat that to the next wave. And I've seen so many sailors, so many boats do that wrong, even on smaller waves and regattas, and they can't figure out why we're blowing past them. I remember one race in particular, the Constellation Cup, which is held every year in Baltimore. We had this big gale come through. It was like 40 knots of breeze. It was like 100 boats out there. And I was on this 22-foot boat, a smaller boat with 3 of us on board. And because we knew what we were doing, we destroyed the fleet. We just wiped the floor of the fleet, came in 3rd place behind a much larger boat. But people just don't know what to do because they haven't been trained or they haven't had the practice to do it. So skill really matters when you're out there.
I know we were talking a little bit about sports, and I wanted to tie this in really quickly because I think that Allen Iverson always gets a bad rap for it was just practice. But I read an article where you talked about where you basically said, I got to do this, this, and this, and then practice twice in the same sentence. How important is practice not only to sailing, but to anything that you apply in life?
Practice is my favorite part of sailing. So I know that sounds weird, but I love practice. The reason why is because when I'm out there, I practice the same way I race, which some people can tell you is really intense. I'm not a yeller, I'm not a fusser, but I'm a person who gets really locked in to what I'm doing. And so every wave, every puff of wind, I feel. And so when I'm out there and I have a chance to sail, I'm studying myself, I'm studying the boat, I'm studying the conditions, because you're always learning something new every time you're out there. And I've been doing this now for almost 30 years, and I learn something new every single time I'm out there. And so if I get a chance to go out there and practice, get to see the environment, get to see the boat, I become pretty dangerous to the competitors around me because now I have a situational awareness, and I'm able to process the information. I'm able to make things work.
When we're talking about practice and stuff and making some of these competitions and some of these runs, let's say you have a competition. I think one of the races you had mentioned was the constellation race.
Yes. Yes.
Do you get a chance to like practice a practice run first, or it has to be like a first go? There's no trial runs.
Sometimes you get to go out. So sometimes you get a practice day. Certain regattas. Certain times you get to go out there and test out your equipment. But most of the time, the race course is always different because they set the course. If you're doing an inland race, the course is set every race. So if you do 4 races in one day, each course is going to be different because they adjust it for the wind shift. When you're offshore in the ocean, you may be going from the same city that you've gone to before and left from before, but the weather and the current is always different every single time. You'll never get the same thing twice. So what you have to develop is your skill set. You have to develop a system that allows you to be able to process the information and make the right decision at the right time. It's never the same. I always tell people all the time, it's like playing chess on the water because you never know where your opponent's going to move the next chess piece.
That's fascinating because it's basically it could be the same run, but because the water doesn't really have any predictability, it's always going to be a different race no matter what. And then if you add weather into it, it probably changes the course as well.
Yes, absolutely, always does.
Wow, that's.
So, give me 1 second. I'm gonna change headphones real quick.
Yeah,
give me 1 second.
Don't sweat it. Yeah, for sure. You hear me? You still there?
Captain, we have some standby. It's pretty bad echoing.
Let's see how we're doing.
I mean,
yeah. I think go ahead.
Got me?
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Yeah. So that's very interesting. So that's got to be even more of a challenge because it doesn't matter how many times you've ran the same race or the same competition. There's so many other outsiding factors that you can't even control that are going to add a different element into you. Man.
Yeah.
That's
a
challenge.
But you know what? That's 100% right, and not a lot of people get that initially. But I'm gonna throw a curveball at you real quick. I look at sailing as a teacher of life, and cause that's how life is. You know, everyone has their own journey to walk, and I can't say to you, do what I did to be successful, because what worked for me at that moment may not work for you ever, and vice versa. And so you have to apply the same philosophy that you do in sailing or life to your sailing. And so some of the most successful sailors live some of the most productive lives, surprisingly, right? Or unsurprisingly, because people who are able to channel their thoughts and process decision making at the right moment and execute it are able to go in the water and say, you know what? Yesterday when I practiced, the current was coming at this angle, at this strength, but today it's now shifted that way and it's a little weaker. So now I need to position myself 15 degrees this way differently. And so you start processing, you start looking at the situation like, okay, I got 5 bills to pay, but I only get paid 3 of them because I only have so much money. So can I get an extension on this bill? You start the way you process life, same way you process you're doing sailing.
Yeah, no, I think that's why for me, I enjoy football so much, and I think even chess too, because a lot of the stuff, the analogies, and some of the lessons are cross trainable. I could imagine that for sailing, it's got to be even more diverse in that situation where you're going against so many different odds, and then you overcome that. That's got to be great to be able to apply in life, where you don't ever come against a wall or a wave that you don't feel that you can surf through and get to the other side and always stay positive, especially when it seems from the stories you're saying, a lot goes wrong on sea, no matter how prepared you are.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah, preparation is like 80% of the journey. And then the other 20% is, well, maybe I'll say 10% luck and 10% skill. Because, what happens a lot of times is everyone has a plan till they get hit, right? I could Mike Tyson quote for you. And so when you're out there and you start a race, your opponent also is starting a race too. They want to win as well. So and they're going through the same conditions you're going through. So you have to figure out how can I maximize my situation to get in front of them. And think about it from this perspective too. If we do a race over a course of 24 hours, and I'm doing 19 knots boat speed, and you're doing 19.1 knots speed, you're going to beat me by 2.4 miles by the end of the day. Because over 24 hours, that fraction of a knot is 2.4 miles. And so that's all it takes to be successful in the water. And that's a same with life. To be successful in life, this takes a little bit more effort than maybe the next person is doing for you to get ahead. It doesn't mean you're going to win. It doesn't mean you're going to be the best of all time. But you can maximize your opportunities by just putting that little extra effort. Maybe instead of eating that one piece of cake, cut it in half. And then you just take some carbs and some calories, and you can lose some weight. That kind of thinking.
Maybe everybody should become a salesman or a salesman or a seaman. Seaman, right? That's the proper term.
Sailor.
Sailor? Yeah, I keep getting it screwed up. Yeah. I was like, man, I got all these different terms. A sailor.
No, it's fine. I've been called all those. Before.
I wanted to ask you, besides, let's say, map, what are other instruments that you use to sail and to be able to tell whether the wind is coming this way or not that way, or the water a little bit more choppier than yesterday? Is it just those two instruments, or do you have others that you use while you're sailing?
Yeah. So equipment today in 2021, thank God for it, man. When I first started sailing, technology was so uncivilized. Yes. Where I always tell people all the time, if this was back in the day, pirate ship days, I wouldn't be a sailor. I love food, so I want good food. I like clean water. And so before technology was around, things were really rough. Now we have apps and stuff where I could be down there in Antarctica and I can talk to you just like I'm talking to you right now on the Zoom here, and it'd be clear as day. And so I can talk to my wife. She can track me on her cell phone. You can track me on your cell phone. And in fact, today you can race me on the app while I'm doing my records. I mean, so technology's gotten to a point now where cameras, technology, microphones, and so I have onboard computers. You usually have 2 or 3 computers on board. One computer we call an autopilot. It steers the boat for you when you're sleeping, or nowadays most autopilots are better than most humans. The AI has gotten so good that they can sense and detect when to steer the boat. You'd be surprised, most human beings are not very good at steering boats. So the autopilot just helps them out. From there, we have software that helps us navigate, get suggestions on routes based on the boat abilities, and you can set wind ranges where if you don't want the boat to sail through winds stronger than 10 knots for some reason, it will tell you don't go that way, go this way instead. We have wind indicators top of the mast, tells what angle the wind's coming from, respective to where the boat's located. We also have sensors on the boat that tells about water temperature and salinity of the water, because those things do matter. The more salinity, the more buoyant you are, for example. So more salt, so like you're in the Pacific Ocean, I think the salt concentration is actually lower than the Atlantic, I think. And so when you're in different oceans, how you balance the weight on your boat determines how the boat performs, all kinds of stuff like that. So there's a lot of technology assisting us. The good thing about that is that it allows you to focus more on the competition versus survival when you're out there.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. Is all that stuff like legal when you're competing, or do they like it more so that it's more raced like old school style, or is all the technology and the racing kind of moved progressively together?
Yeah, so there's different leagues in sailing, just like USC and auto sport racing. Like Formula One car racing is the pinnacle of car racing, and so technology there is well more advanced than you're going to see in any other level. And so just in sailing, the racing I do is on a Formula One level. And so the technology we have is kind of unlimited. Whatever you can think of, do. On other races, there are some races, one race in particular, where you're only allowed to use a sextant, which is an old compass device that you use with the stars and the moon to know where you are on the map. Other races, some crew races around the world, you're not allowed to even use an autopilot like we use. You have to use a limited pilot that only can steer based on heading and wind angle It can't do any advanced stuff. So every race has a specialty to it. But the stuff I do is more open class racing. It's more you bring your boat, I bring my boat, whoever wins wins.
That's awesome. Well, you said a sextant? Is that the name of the piece of equipment?
A sextant.
A sextant.
Yes.
Sextant.
Yes.
No, I was just
So
gonna.
yeah, so when you see them in the pirate movies.
How do you see the stars in the daytime?
Right. So use the sun. The sun is, of course, the sun is a star itself. So you use the sun, and you would do what's called dead reckoning. And what you have an almanac, the British put together back in the day, and you can go through based on the time of day, the season, and the rough idea where you are in the world, and you can narrow it down pretty accurately where you are. A good dead reckoning, you would probably do it morning when the sun comes up, noon, and as the sun's going down. That's for your latitude, but longitude you pretty much see a stopwatch and a good guesstimation of what time it is of day and that kind of stuff. But it's not very used very often because there's so many satellite constellations out there now that GPS is going to be around for a long time. So.
Yeah, no, wow, that's so much. I mean, I guess that like you were saying, that's how they used to do it back in the day. It's got to be nuts to just be using stars and even the biggest star, the sun, to kind of steer where you're headed. Thinking about some of the settlers that came from Europe over here, that must have been nuts, especially when, one, you thought the earth was flat, and two, you had no destination really. You were just going, right? And I saw a lot of these guys using
right. You were guessing.
Right? I mean, you said earlier, it was like 100% luck.
It's one of those things where...
Go ahead.
Yeah. No. Actually, one place you're going here is that back in the... So back in the day, you have to think to yourself, having a sextant and an almanac was advanced technology. And so by today's standard, that's primitive stuff. We try not to have to use that. But the luck has become a smaller factor as the technology has improved. And so 20 years ago, the computer systems were so primitive and the satellite and the weather routing was so bad that you would think you're heading in the right direction, and it turns out, oh no, I'm sailing toward a hurricane. But you wouldn't know unless you had a barometer or something to help you with pressures and stuff. But today, you can pull your cell phone up right now and look at the weather in Antarctica for the next 3 weeks, and it will be pretty accurate. I mean, so today is a lot
That's awesome.
Different.
I wanted to switch gears for a second because you said you've been sailing pretty much not 100%, but since you were 9, you were really interested in this stuff. You also joined the Navy. What was your job in the Navy? Were you driving boats, or were you? How did that whole experience? By the way, thank you for your service. Talk to me a little bit about your time out.
Nope. See, so very important. So this misconception about my history. So it's good to clear it up right now. So I was never active in the U.S. Navy.
Okay.
I was never active. I was in Naval ROTC, which I was successful at that. I couldn't join the Navy because I have asthma. And so because of the asthma, I wasn't able to actually serve. But the irony is that I got a commission to go to the Naval Academy from the late Elijah Cummings in '99. And I also went to teach at the Naval Academy as an instructor, ironically, afterwards. And because of my connection with the Navy growing up, I actually did also do military research for a number of years at David Taylor Research Lab, John Hopkins APL in Columbia, Maryland. I got to do some naval undersea warfare work as well. So I have a strong affinity and passion for the U.S. Navy to the point where if I could have served, they would have to kick me out by the time I would be like Maverick, the new Top Gun movie. You would have to kick me out before I would leave. That's how much I actually enjoy it.
Wow, so that's interesting. So you were an instructor. Okay, so let me wheel it back then. So how do you obviously you got the captain in front of the name. Is that something that you got to take a test for?
Yes.
How do you get like a captain's license? I don't even know how you go about all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Nope, that's exactly what it is. It's captain's license. So it's a merchant marine captain's license. So you have the U.S. Navy who pretty much patrols and guards the oceans, and then you have the merchants who command the cruise ships and the tankers and tugboats. And so we're all civilians, but we have commanded vessels. It's just not so like the vessel, a tugboat, we call it the SS Mary Lou. It'll be sailing vessel, sailing ship Mary Lou. It wouldn't be USS like you would see the Enterprise or Nimitz because it's a United States ship that belongs to the United States of America. And so what happens to earn a captain's license, you have to have years of experience, and you also have to be able to pass certain courses on certain levels. And so each level, there's different levels of captainship, if you want to call it that. And we generally measure based on tonnage, based on how much of a vessel you're able to command. And so my certification, I have a master's license for 100 tons. And so that would allow me to command maybe a tugboat, something if I wanted to, or a nice cruise ship in the harbors or bay and stuff like that. To be able to command a cruise liner, you have to have unlimited or 500 ton or unlimited. And those are the guys who do that for a living. That's not an area of interest of mine. I got my license so I can deliver boats. And so what that happens is based on my certification, my experience, more and more people will hire me and trust me because they know I have an education in the background. And the more experience you get, the more opportunities you get. So.
All right, so let's go. We'll go back. Thanks for straightening that out for me because I guess I must have misread it the way I put the articles together. But so 9 years old.
Oh, that's fine.
You check out the whole boat. Obviously, you're fascinated. You get a chance to get with the captain. He talks to you a little bit, talks to you about traveling, sailing, all this other stuff. From that point on, were you just like a junkie? You wanted to read every magazine, every book. You were on boats as much as possible. Is that how it consumed you? Walk me through like from 9 to about your teenage years, with you falling truly in love with not only sailing but the ocean.
Yeah. Excellent question. Which is fun. I don't get asked the progression question very often, so that's a good question. So when I was 9 years old, I mentioned I got to go sailing on a boat called the Lady Merlin, which is a schooner. And from that point on, I got to go to camp every summer and go sailing. And I did that for about 3 or 4 years. And then I had a chance to join Naval Junior ROTC. And I got to work with the Navy and go into the Naval Academy and sail on their boats, Navy 44s and Colgate 26s. And then a big opportunity came my way in Baltimore where a sailing school opened up called the Downtown Sailing Center. And it's a nonprofit education program. And in 1999, I got to go there and start teaching there in 2000. And I got to sail literally every single day. It became like heaven for me. And so while I was supposed to be in class studying at Morgan, I went to Morgan State University for engineering. I was supposed to be in class studying. I ended up actually going sailing every single day. And so I started teaching there and I started learning how to fix boats. And after about 2 years of being there nonstop sailing, teaching courses and stuff, I had accumulated, so much knowledge and experience that I was able to then transfer that out into the bay and then start racing in the bay against the professionals and semi-pros out there. And then from there, after I won a couple of championships out there, then I was able to take that out into the ocean, start competing out in the ocean. And then from there, then I went to doing deliveries. And so I was able to progress each level because I took the time to do it. And I'm not saying people should do this, but this is what I did. While I was in my senior year engineering at Morgan State, I actually left college to become a captain with the Merchant Marine, so I can do my deliveries and racing. So I never actually finished college, even though I was a pretty good student. I was engineer of the year a couple of times. I knew what I needed to do, and I had a chance at that stage to work for Bruce Schwab and his program with his race boat. And so if you're going to tell me I have a chance to fulfill my dream and work with the best sailor the country had produced at the time, I'm going to do that. And that's what I did. And that was the right decision to make because that's how I got to where I am now, almost 15, 20 years later now. So yeah.
That's awesome. So was that like an invitation, or was it that you just chomping at the bit so much they were like, we got to get this guy a chance? Because I know it's one of the things I struggled with trying to do this whole project is finding mentors, and not only finding mentors, but mentors that are open and interested to mentor you. Because a lot of people don't fully believe that you have the passion and, you know, the commitment that it takes to be the best. Because not everybody does everything to be the best. There's a small few of people that I think that do things to be the best, and I try to be one of those. You seem to be another person in that favor. So if you could talk to me, did it happen by accident, or I mean, because to be like you were saying, that guy seems like his resume is pretty good. For you to have an opportunity to work with him must be amazing.
Yeah. So Bruce, I started harassing him. I mean harassing, by the way. Back in like
they don't listen to you
2000.
unless you harass them.
You gotta be after them. And so I started harassing him in 2000. He was trying to race around the world in 2000, and he just missed out on it. So he went to do a race around the world in 2002. And I just kept emailing him. This is before social media. MySpace didn't exist yet. And so I'm harassing this guy, emailing him, calling him. And so eventually I got to meet him right after the Vendée in 2005 at Annapolis Boat Show. And, you know, we're walking through, and there he is at his booth. And so it was like a halo. It was like kind of like, you know, the God is there. So I'm nervous. I'm not gonna BS. I was nervous.
I feel
he's never known this, and he's going to hear this. He's going to laugh hysterically. so I saw him, went up to him. You know, we said, "Hey, how you doing?" I'm Captain Lawson. I'm Don Lawson, and he said, "Oh, so you're the guy who's been harassing me and messaging me." And so, you know, we're talking, and eventually it was time to go. And I said, "Well, look, if you ever need someone to help you with anything, let me know." And so he said, "Well, I think I'm good to go, but thanks for your offer." Well, I gave him my number, my card. Here you go. So reach out to me. So I go home. The next morning, my phone rings, and it's probably like 7 in the morning. This guy gets up early morning, rides bikes like for 20 miles a day. He calls me at 7 in the morning on a Sunday and says, "Hey, so as an officer out there, you're still interested to work with me?" I said, "Well, yeah, I'm kind of in college right now, but yeah." He said, "Well, I'll pay you. I'll fly you out." I said, "Done. When do you need me there?" And from there, I took off. And this guy taught me so much freaking stuff. I mean, you don't know what you don't know until a master teaches you stuff. And so we're out there, and this guy is walking through just to him basic stuff, and I'm like, I thought I knew what I was doing. I thought I was really good, and I was pretty good at the time. But you know, to reach a level of a master, to be able to be one of the best in the world, he finished 9th place in the round the world race out of 30 boats. I mean, he was the first American to ever do it. I mean, so this is just mind-boggling. And he wasn't even pushing that hard. He could have finished even higher if he really pushed as hard as he wanted to. And so we're out there, and then we're sailing, and the best compliment in my life I had ever gotten at that stage was we were pulling in to Charleston, and he said to me, in front of the crew, he said, "You know what? You did a really good job tonight." And I was like, I was almost started crying. I almost feel like, if you're a basketball player and Michael Jordan tells you that you're a really good ball player, it's just like in tears, like, oh my goodness, I've impressed this guy. And so we've been friends, and I harass him to this day still. He has a really cool business up in Maine that does electrical repair and construction for boats called Ocean Planet Energy. And so he was the hands-on mentor. And so it's so hard to get mentors. I always tell people all the time, if you don't have an apprentice, you're probably not a master. Because what has to happen, you have to pass on your knowledge just like it was passed on to you. And so I have tons of people that I mentor and talk to all the time. And I give information away for free. I don't charge. But maybe besides a pizza and a bourbon, besides that, it's free.
Right.
So,
yeah, no, that's incredible. I wanted to ask you 2 questions over that. What was one of the most dumbfounded things that he had mentioned to you that you were like, man, I thought I knew my stuff, but he just opened your eyes to something else that you were impressed with? And then the second question would be, what did you really learn from your experience and time with him?
Yeah. So the one thing that blew my mind, this guy is very meticulous. And so again, I'm probably OCD on some level. I'm very meticulous in what I do. But this guy has systems where we left out day after Thanksgiving in the hailstorm, and we're slamming up wind and like 50 knots of breeze. And we're doing our thing, The next morning, he has things organized and packaged and positioned, and he just had everything in order. And again, I'm a pretty orderly guy. Okay, so I mean, to the point where everything has to be perfect. But this guy was so precise that I said to myself, I have to raise my game even higher. I can't. What I do is good enough, maybe for the East Coast, maybe it's good enough for the Bay, but to compete on an international level, this is where you have to reach for. And so when I could talk to him, he has a very unique way of looking at things. Where to the point where one of the things he told me before was, your preparation is your victory. You know, if you can get there and be ready to go, then you've already won. You won the battle of being there. Now go out there and do what you're good at. And so, yeah, I mean, I have a lot of mentors that I don't technically know. I never met, for example, like Michael Jordan's my role model. Like if I see a person, if I see Michael Jordan, I will sit there and just talk to him for days, hours. Another guy that was close and dear to my heart that I never met was Kobe Bryant. I actually still to this day listen to his stuff nonstop. Um, and so when it comes to those two guys, they're so competitive, they're so driven. We talked about practice, putting in the effort behind the doors. I love what I do, and when I talk to people, I hope it shows. And I think it does because people then come to me, not because they want to become sailors or they want to race in the ocean, but they want to apply that mentality to what they're doing. And so my goal is now, I'm old at 40 years old now, almost 40. My goal is now to help next generation be able to do what they're going to do, whether it's painting or dancing or singing, whatever it is, how much effort you put in is what you're going to get out of it. And that's what I've gotten from my mentors over the years.
No, that guy sounds rad, man. You almost brought me to tears, bro, because it's so hard. When you start banging on the door, it's almost like, because you mentioned the Mr. Miyagi analogy. It's almost like when you have to, if you brought it to like a kung fu movie where the apprentice like stays outside waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting and waiting for the master to open the door, and you finally get there and they start training you.
Yeah.
Life is a journey, and what you pursue is a journey, but to find someone that's going to help you move the needle is also a journey too. And it's not always so easy. I think people think that, oh, you get a mentor and boom, they just show up, and you got to keep knocking, you got to keep showing up. But that's great that you were able to work with someone of that caliber and take your game to the next level. And I think it's also awesome that you're available, and you see how difficult it was for you, that you're more available for other people. Because I think that the older generation, they made us work for their attention a little bit more. I am the same way like you. Anybody wants my time, I'm available. I'm not going to make it hard for you. But you also notice that sometimes when you're too available, right? People they take advantage of you, but they might not apply themselves as consistently.
They don't appreciate
100%, 100%. And so I think that's a really great lesson. I want to ask you, so you got with this guy, boom, we're kind of going through like the chronological order of how you got to the success that you've reached. When did you start racing at a professional level?
Yeah, so that was before this experience. I started getting paid to race in like 2003, and I got to stay with Bruce in like 2005, 2006. The thing about professional racing is there are millions of us. Okay, so there's people out there just as good as me, better, worse. But the key is to stand out. And in this country in particular, in the United States, traditional sailors were good at one job. Like if you're on a boat, your job was to steer. And that's all you could do. You couldn't trim a sail, you couldn't navigate, you can't fix anything, and you were a specialist. And what I had to learn, and this is going to go a little different direction now for the conversation a little bit. What I had to do as a young black kid in the sport was I had to be good at everything to have a chance, because I needed to find a way to get on a boat, and whatever that team needed, I had to be able to fulfill to have a chance. And so if I got on a boat and they said, well, I was trying to get on a boat, and the guy said, well, we need a trimmer today. Can you trim a sail? You better be able to say yes, or you're not going to go sailing that day. And so I had to learn how to master all different skills. And this is very much a French mindset, by the way. Uh, I learned a lot of my offshore stuff from the French sailors because they do a lot of shorthanded, which means pretty much three or less people on the boat. Where in America, most of the time in the past, we had 10, 15, 20 people on the boat. And so when you're racing over in Europe in particular, you have to be able to do everything by yourself because you're on the boat by yourself, or you're shorthanding. You have a few crew members. And so if you're the weak link, your team loses. And so one of the philosophies in my culture, and it may be shared by other cultures as well, as you're told as a young kid, you have to always be three times better than your counterpart, if you will. And that mentality is why you look at a lot of the athletes who dominate these sports, whether it's tennis. I mean, look at tennis, great example. I'll just stick with that. American tennis is dominated by black females. And a lot of that came from Venus and then Serena. And then now, you have this new generation of girls. And if it wasn't for these girls following behind Venus, her career, where would American tennis be right now? It would be terrible. And so you look at then Tiger golf, obviously, on his dominance. You look at Lewis Hamilton in Formula One, his dominance. Of course, basketball and football are self-explanatory in that respect. And so you look at certain sports as we're raised to know if you want to have a chance, you better dominate. And so the mentality for a lot of these kids as we're coming up is you don't go out there just to win. You have to make sure you humiliate someone, make sure that they know that you're here, and make sure that they don't question it was luck. Because do you follow Formula One at all?
A little bit. I'm trying to get into it. A shout out to Little King. He's gonna be coaching me up more on my racing skills. But I'm not. I'm plugged into the big three: basketball, football, baseball. That's usually where I'm at. The level of competition is there. Formula One seems to be a little bit more interesting. So the short answer is no. But please, continue.
Yeah, watch his career. Yeah,
I will. Tell me.
Yeah, watch his career. He's going to be good. He's going to be really good, and I'm excited for him. And so when you look at Formula One, the sport, Lewis Hamilton has 7 championships now. He's tied with Michael Schumacher. And when you read the blogs and stuff, you'll see one of two things. You'll see either A, everyone says he's only winning because of his car, or B, they'll say he's the luckiest driver to ever drive. And people spend so much time trying to denigrate what he's done because they don't want to accept the fact that this guy with cornrows is dominating Formula One. And remember, he's the only African American driver in Formula One's history. Not just the best, but he's the only one in 71 years.
Now you piqued my interest because, especially being a minority myself, I think it's always great when we have our breakthrough moments. And that's amazing. Not only dominating a sport that's usually European, but to be also an Afro-American, that's a huge
Well, he's British.
British. Oh, okay.
He's British. He's British.
He's a
British black man.
I gotta learn from you.
No, it's all good. It's all good. It's all good. It's all good. He's a British black man, but the key is that his dominance frightens a lot of people because now the thought is, will there be another one behind him? And there probably will be because some kids watching him is saying, let's say he ends up with 10 championships. Well, the kid's like, well, I want to get 12. And so now you have a kid who's even more driven to beat his mentors, inspiration. That's why you look at Naomi, who now is pretty much supplanted Serena.
Yeah, that was
she grew up watching
to her for sure. She was amazing at that performance.
Right. And now it's her time. Kobe passed Michael because Michael got old, and so Kobe took over. And so it's a progression thing where, when I look at my career, there were 2 other brothers who went around the world, but they didn't race. They weren't doing it as records. They were just doing it for the journey and experience. I'm doing this because I'm a competitor. I want to, when I set my world records, yes, one would be first African American, blah, blah, blah. But the key is that I want the American record. I want the world record. I don't want to be just known as the best black sailor. I want to be known as the best sailor. And the only way you achieve that is by dominating everyone. And so Tiger Woods is not just the best black golfer. He's the best golfer. And Serena Williams currently is the best tennis player, not just the best black tennis player. And so the key is that when we're being raised and mentored and taught by our parents and our mentors and coaches, you're told straight up, you gotta come correct because you get a window. And while you have your window, you gotta do what you gotta do. And then when you're done, little kid will come behind you. Then his turn. He's going to take it and he's going to run with it. And that's the mentality we have.
Yeah, no, that's extremely profound. I think with everything that's going on in the social climate, I think that certain folks are trying to spotlight this, but this is extremely important, that we look at allowing other individuals to compete at high levels, because we're all just human. But apparently, the way everybody else sees it, we see it through a prism of color, and that's not the truth. A great performance is a great performance. I wanted to ask you. You just mentioned a little while ago about how you had to be kind of a master, a jack of all trades. Being a jack of all trades, I'm sure that helped you get on the boats. What other kind of hurdles did you deal with being an Afro-American? Because sailing is not for the poor people, man. Cats in the hood are not driving sailboats.
No.
And those things are pretty expensive if you're going from freaking Nice to Madrid. So if you could talk to me a little bit about some of the hurdles that you kind of dealt with being Afro-American in a predominantly, I would say, probably white sport. Not only that, a wealthy sport, because it can't be cheap to get in there. I think, what you talked a little bit about with Tiger, that was the interesting thing for him as well, because golf is expensive too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you hit it right on the head. That the reality is that sailing traditionally has been a rich white man's sport. Yachtsmen, just by the name, yachtsman. And so what you have for me is that I had to be a jack of all trades, but the bigger point, I had to be good at what I did, because you develop a reputation. And so once you come to a yacht club and they see you for the first time, they either confuse you as a help, which has happened before, they think you're lost, which has happened before, or they assume that you're there just to look and admire them doing their thing. And so what happens then when they find out, no, I'm here to compete, just like everyone else, you go out there, and because I am who I am, I don't forget your face. And so when I see you out there, I say to myself, I can't lose to that person right there. And so I make a list, I target people, and I take them out. And what happens after you start winning and being successful, people start looking at you kind of like you're a prodigy or something, like, this must be the token one. Must be the one that we didn't know was coming. And then at that point, then they try to get you to join their team, not necessarily just because they want to win, but they helps them look good, because then it's like, oh, see, I'm supporting them now. And so what happens is opportunity is still opportunity. And so I'll give you one example. I won't say names, but some people from my past are going to know who I'm talking about. But there was this one guy in particular who just passed away a year ago. He and I were kind of rivals on the water a little bit in Baltimore. And we competed pretty well against each other. And he asked me to join his team, which I did for a year and a half. And during this time period, while I'm competing with him, we're dominating. We're killing everybody, because we brought two really good sailors together as one. And then the end of the year came where you get to nominate awards for the best sailors in the fleet. And this guy didn't nominate me. He nominated someone else. And he called me and apologized and said, hey, I nominated this other kid because of his story. He's new. He's trying to get into it. And I said to myself, okay. And I never raced with him again. I did proceed the next year to beat him pretty good. Let's say the bad word, but I proceeded to beat him pretty good next year. But you got to imagine, as a young kid, relatively young kid, early 20s, you're out there and you're winning, you're doing well, and you think everything's great. And then it turns out the guy you're racing with doesn't have your back. And so, and I don't have tons of stories like that, but I have a lot of stories like that, if you will. And it's one of those situations where I've had times where I went home crying. My parents would not let me quit sailing. I had another situation where I prepared the boat for a regatta, and the day of the regatta, the boat was taken from me and given to another person to use, and I had to use a lesser boat. And then in that scenario, I still managed to finish mid-fleet But the boat that I had prepared won the regatta. And so it was one of those things where when you're going through this, when you have to depend on other people to be successful, they're going to do what's best in their best interest, which is why it's so important to take, on the burden yourself and say, you know what, I'm gonna get my boat, I'm gonna do my thing, I'm gonna do it my own way. And when I started doing that, I started winning more. And so it's one of those things where, at the end of the day, not everyone's going to be happy that you're out there. I know that. They want their kids to win too, or now, some adult now, they want their spouses to win too. But at the end of the day, the best person is going to win if the playing field is even. And if I lose because someone's better than me, not lost because they're better than me, and I have to come back next time and do better. But I don't want the opportunity to be taken from me because I'm darker. I have SPS 15 in my skin. You know.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you on that. I wanted to ask you, because I think this is very, very important, especially for my audience too, because I reach out and I've spoken to a lot of people when it talks about, inspiration and lifting yourself up, and everything doesn't go as according to plan. Your parents, they didn't let you quit. How did you find it within yourself not to let yourself quit? Because everybody, it really comes down to you, right? Not so much anybody else's interest. I mean, it's great to have the support, but even with me with this project, I've had situations like that too, and not so much because of color or not color, but just the jealousy, and people don't want to give up the spot, right? And
Yeah.
people when they're sitting on the throne, they don't want no new princesses or princes to come in and take their spot, and it was a huge hurdle and uh, an opportunity for me to overcome, but I had to dig deep, and it just as of recently I started to emerge where I was like, listen, the only person in my way is myself. How did where did you pull inspiration from, or how did you dig deeper to kind of stay with it? Because if you were to quit, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Exactly. And so when I say quit, by the way, I'm not saying I was going to quit my career per
No, I
se.
get you.
I was going to probably take some time away from that. Yeah, but it's just for the people listening. I was going to quit my career. I was going to stop sailing at that location, and that would have been tragic as well because I helped some other kids come along eventually. But to your other point, where does my fight come from? So I come from a really competitive family. And my father's a pastor of a church. My older brother's a pastor of a church. My younger brother's a youth minister. My sister is active in the army. My mother, not just being a first lady, she raised 3 boys and a girl and took care of a whole neighborhood of kids. And so there is a level of fortitude that I was raised with where you're not allowed to quit, you're not allowed to whine. No, life is not fair. It's not fair for anyone. And so, but you have to do something. My dad always said, you're going to have to do something. He said, even if you are sweeping in the streets for a living, you're going to do something. And so, for me, once I make up my mind that I want to be the best at something or I want something, I have never let anything stop me. I have never let anyone beat me. I don't like losing. Okay? I mean, like, I have a bigger fear of losing than the love of winning. And this is why, and this is not a shot at any professional athletes or anyone else, but this is why I relate so much more to Kobe and Michael in that mentality, where I've been seasick and still raced. I've been injured and still raced. I've had damaged boats and still finished my races. At the end of the day, I'm going to come home with doing the best job I could possibly do. And what happens a lot of times when I watch other athletes in different sports and stuff, I can watch them. And if you get a chance to do this as well, don't watch what they're doing on the court. Watch their psyche. Watch how their minds work. Watch when the pressure comes on, and you start seeing them flinch. You start seeing them shake a little bit. Because what happens when I'm watching certain athletes in certain situations, I'm studying their body language, their mental state. And when there was a time period in my career where I was struggling a little bit in racing because I was going through some relationship issues with an ex-girlfriend and stuff. And I was really down on myself. I was just terrible at sailing. And when two of my buddies, they took me out racing, and they figured if we beat him enough times in the racing, he'll get his mind back. And they were correct because they beat me 4 times in a row. and I just lost it. I just locked in, and I started to see and feel things again, and got my mind back. So my mental state, when I'm competing, is not like how I am right now talking to you. Right now I'm talking to you. It's fun, free flowing. But when I get focused and locked in, I really get locked in. And very few people I meet can do that. And so when I mentor people, when I talk to people, I can tell how committed they are. And I measure everything from 10 to 0. I can tell where they are on the scale. And so most people I meet are 3s and 4s. They have an idea, they're passionate about something, but they're not willing to die for the cause, if you will. And the most dangerous person in the world is a zealot, a person who's willing to go all in. And that's how I am with life and my sport. And so when it comes down to it, I say I'm going to go do it. It's happening.
That's amazing. You definitely got me inspired, bro. Out of that whole nucleus family, who would you say would be your biggest inspiration? Would it be mom or would it be dad?
Oof, that's a tough question. Oh goodness, I'm getting in trouble with this. All right.
Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the
All right. The
spot.
question was inspiration.
Right.
No, that's fine. Because so you preface it. So you give me a saving grace there. Most
You're welcome.
inspiration will be my father. Yeah, that's fine. That'll be my father from inspiration purposes. The reason why is because my mother she's a hardworking, she's a fighter, she's a strong individual, she's committed. My father and I have a lot in common mentally. My father has been a leader since day one, since he was a child. His mother passed when he was very young, and he had to raise his sisters and take care of people. So he's been a leader from day one. And growing up, I would see my dad preach. My dad was a coach for basketball and baseball and stuff. I would see him. He was Inspector General for NASA for a number of years. I would see him at work, commanding staffs and stuff. He had 2 secretaries. I mean, this guy was always in command. And so watching that, I was saying to myself, that's where I need to be. This is how I need to think. This is how I need to conduct myself. He takes care of his people. Everyone around my father is always taken care of and cared for. And so that's what I do. If you like my wife, I spoil my wife right. I just take care of her. She's always happy. I always make sure she's good to go because that's my responsibility. My people, I take care of. And so I get that very much from my father. And another side note is that I'm also very blessed. I can't pretend that I came out my mom this way and I was just like, to die, here I am. No, I got to grow up around a lot of solid men growing up. And so, like the pastor of my church I used to go to growing up, I call him my grandfather. He was there. He taught me so much stuff. My father-in-law, who was a captain in the Army, and this man also is a guy who takes care of everyone. He looks after people to this day. And so, for me, I was around the right men to learn how to be a proper man. And so, when you see me around my people, my team, the one thing they always say about me is I'm very loyal. I'm always there for them. And that's just because that's the way it's supposed to be. And I expect people to be the same way around me. If you're not a team player, if you're not family, I don't have much use for you because eventually you're going to turn on us anyways.
Yeah, no, again, extremely profound. That's awesome. I think again, we were talking about it earlier. Sometimes we don't even notice the mentors that are around us when we're growing up, and we don't see the people sowing into us. And thank God that you have been blessed. I've also been fortunate to have some great gents around me that I could have borrowed and watched and see. And obviously for you and me, watching someone commit to hard work is something that stays with you because you can literally see it and you can see them, reap what they're putting in. I wanted to ask you, I seen on your social, and I thought this was really great. You had like this really good like round table of actors, and I think they even sprinkled in some in there, Lady Gaga, and it was talking about visualization. How do you use visualization to continue to push yourself and reach newer goals and break through? And now you're trying to go after this, world record. How does visualization work for you in your life, and how do you use it?
Yes, absolutely. So, imagination, our minds are one of God's greatest creations. We're able to process things and we're able to dream. You know, uh, Everything we have in front of us, whether it's computers or television, someone dreamed of this. They had a vision of making a device, a laptop, where you can take this wherever you go. And so for me, when I think, my mind, I run simulations in my head. I run, imaginative dreams where I'm like, okay, I want to achieve this record. I've probably have raced around the world a million times in my head with different scenarios in my head. And when I dream at night, I'm dreaming about the same trip. I'm dreaming about the same stuff, the same boat, or sometimes different boats. But I'm always dreaming about just getting to that finish line. What it will be like to stand there and say, "It's done. I got it done." And for me, again, the fear of not doing it is what motivates me more than the fear of completing it. And so there's also times where I sit there and I think to myself, wow, if I stop today, I'm not going to get this done. Or if I let this person who says me, because so say for you, on social media, you'll get these idiots, hype man 356 in his mama's basement, saying to you that you can't do it, or no one cares what you're doing, doesn't matter. Right? I'm sure. Don't you get those kind of messages too?
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot more hate in the streets than there's love, bro.
Absolutely, and it's mind-boggling because what happens is that you have people who've already given up, and so I talked a few minutes ago about I watch professional athletes, and they're playing their sports and critical moments in games and stuff, and you can look in their eyes and tell they don't think they're going to win. And I think Henry Ford said it best when he said, "Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right." And so what happens a lot of times is people, as things get hard, is think, "Man, it's not fair. The world's against me. It's not going to happen." And the moment you start doing that, you're starting to slow yourself down. And of course, all of us have doubts. All of us have issues that happen. But what gets me through is I say to myself, I'm doing this for a bigger cause. I'm doing this for my family, my friends, the culture, my team. Because when you have people working with you, they're sacrificing their time from their kids, from their spouses. They could be working with another athlete. They can work with another sailor if they wanted to. I mean, they're here with me. So I have an obligation to give 110% every single time and get the job done. Because if I don't do my job, I'm doing a disservice to them. And what kind of person would I be then? So the vision, the imagery in your head has to be about the totality of what you're trying to achieve. And too often, kids are told not to imagine anymore. When we were kids, we got to draw paintings of random stuff and then present it to the class and say, "This is my pet dragon." Today, kids are like, "No, you have to only do this. You have to go this path." And it's like when you start limiting people's imaginations and creativity, our humanity is weakened that way. And so, if you want people to be the best they can be and achieve things, imagination is everything.
Yeah, no. I have kids now, and whatever they think up, it's always yes, right? You don't want to cap people off.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that whatever just dream big, right? I think there's so many
Yeah.
Les Brown quotes that are going through my head right now, but one of them is, if you aim for the moon and you miss, you end up amongst the stars, and it's powerful to
right.
be able to do that, man. And it's important, especially for everybody. I mean, we got to definitely all come together, but it's hard because everybody wants to win, but they don't realize that there's a lot of space on the mountaintop, man. We can all win, right? But it doesn't seem like you said the 365 hater. He's not going to allow that. But positive thinking. I even thought about when you were speaking too on how for one negative emotion or thought, it takes 11 times to hear a positive one to change your mind. So obviously negativity, when you give it its power, it seems to be stronger and more powerful. But at the end of the day, it's not. You just got to continue to persist and break through. And it's not going to be easy, man. I mean, I think a message that I try to send to my kids is life is hard. And, it doesn't always have to be, But when you're trying to say I'm going to be the best, it's not going to be easy. When you're saying I'm going to break records, it's not going to be
No.
easy. And so it's extremely important to keep that point of view strong. And I'm super excited to meet you and see that there's someone else in the space that thinks like that. I mean, shucks, you got to start your own YouTube channel, bro, and start yelling at the world and telling people that we can all do it, because we need more of you.
Gary B. Style.
So I wanted to. We got really emotional. I think I almost dropped a couple tears in that conversation. I don't want to.
No.
I wanted to ask you, being that Black History Month just left us a day ago. I wanted to ask you. You talked about Kobe. You talked about Jordan. What did a gent like Martin Luther King mean to you growing up? Did it have an impact on you? I mean, you said your dad was a pastor. You grew up into that whole background, and speaking and being able to be a leader obviously is almost parallel in the way you grew up and the way Martin Luther King kind of had his up and coming times. So if you can talk to me a little bit about that, and then we'll switch gears a little bit more back to sports and racing.
Yeah, absolutely. Not excellent question. So Martin Luther King Jr. When you read about his history and the direction he was going, he was a visionary, a person who wanted to leave the planet in a better place than he was born into. And it's going to sound really weird, but his positive energy escalated the more negativity escalated. So he was always trying to be more as positive as the negativity was. And what you have happen was that mentality started spreading. One of the important things that we learn from him and others is that not everyone who has uncomfortability with other races is a racist. Okay? There's people who just don't know. And so what happens a lot of times is you'll have people who grew up in the mountains, I'm not going to say a state, but a mountain range someplace, who only know what the grandfather taught them, what the father taught them, what the mother taught them. And that's it. And so then when they see a Martin Luther King or a Tiger Woods or someone of color come around, they're going to base their actions on what they were taught. Now, the key is this. When I go places, the yacht clubs and stuff, and these people have never been around African American before, I'm an ambassador for my culture. It's my responsibility to go there and share who we are, how we operate, and do it in a manner that helps bring them and make them an ally. Doesn't always mean that they will become an ally. Maybe not today, maybe not 10 years from now. But my actions can help bridge people who don't have experience, don't know. And so when you look at like Barack and Michelle back in the day when they were president, a lot of people just didn't know that they were African American professors. Something just that basic, and it's not their fault because they're in their bubble, they're living in their town, they haven't been anywhere. And so their responsibility, as Michelle Obama said in her book Becoming, is to always set the stage for the next couple behind them who comes in, become president as a minority, because what they do is going to be measured, it's going to be overanalyzed, it's going to be nitpicked because people are trying to learn. Sometimes they're learning for negative reasons, sometimes they're trying to learn for positive reasons. But at the end of the day, whether it's Martin Luther King or Malcolm X or Sidney Poitier or all these people, they all try to teach a lesson of present yourself as a testament of what humanity could be. And then what happens if people are eager and willing to learn, then they're going to learn from you by watching your actions. And so that's the burden I also carry with me when I go to these yacht clubs, because Mr. Commodore, who's 80 years old, may have a son who has a child, and these children are going to learn stuff from their parents. And I'll never get credit for that. I don't need credit for it. But if someone's better off because of my actions, then I live my life correctly.
Yeah, no, that's what it is, man. And I appreciate you being an ambassador for us and carrying yourself in a way that echoes to people, to let them know that we are just the same, just what they don't know, and you don't know what you don't know, right?
Right. I mean, ask the average American about Chinese history. How much are they going to know? probably know something. So should I get mad and judge you because you don't know about someone's culture? So, but if you get a chance to learn it, and then you can make a decision about how you're going to act. So I think it's very important that we keep this perspective of no one knows everything. Okay, we're all learning. We're all on a journey. We all have maybe 80 years. In that 80 years, we're all going to do the best we can, and hopefully, it's good enough to push the species along.
I'm jumping a little bit all over the place, but I want to keep some of the things in line. You talked about when you were talking about Dr. King on how he left or wanted to leave the place better than he found it. I read a little bit about you as well, that you care immensely about how we're taking care of our oceans and our bodies of water. If you can tell me a little bit about how profound that mission in your life is. I mean, I know you talked about using, biodiesel and solar panels and some of these other things to kind of help out remedy those problems. But it doesn't seem as a whole the narrative is for us to be looking at our oceans because obviously things are starting to change. The earth, Mother Nature's starting to get a little upset. So if you could talk to me a little bit about, your passion about the environment and some of the things that even us can practice, because, apparently, there's a lot of plastic in the water. So if you can just, tell me what you think about all of that stuff.
Yeah. So what we can, I'm gonna go backwards to those questions, but they're really good questions. What we can do every day is think about conservation. And so, like for example, I'm drinking out of a metal container here, not a plastic bottle, a metal container I can clean and reuse over and over again. Just me doing that once a week saves 10 water bottles. And so, the small things that we can do, like for example, on top of our house here, the ranch house we have here, we have solar panels, 30 panels. And these panels, of course, bring in sunlight and power the house. And so we use less power on the grid, thus reducing green carbon emissions. Some of this stuff is extreme because we do have a cabin out in the woods, but we have a well, 189 feet well, so we have fresh water off of aquifer, and so that also helps to reduce the waste of water and stuff. So there are always things you can do if you live in a city. The same thing, you ride a bike versus always driving. If you're going a block down the street because of wings and come home, walk. Ride a bike. You don't have to drive there, come back. So small things like that. But as far as like the ocean and stuff, yeah. So imagine, I do talk about this all the time, by the way. So I got a bit spiel on this one. So imagine if you went to work every day and your office is filthy, and air conditioning doesn't work, it's hot outside, and the light switches are flickering all the time, and there's trash on the floor. Not only is it demoralizing as a human being to work in a filthy environment, but it's not healthy. The mold, the bacteria builds up. And that's kind of how it is for me on the ocean. When I'm out there sailing and I see trash bags, and this is like real, like I've seen large black trash bags just floating around the ocean, out 100 miles out, not like near the coastline, like 100 miles out, you'll see trash bags floating around. You'll see oil slicks in the water from the oil that may have leaked off of boats and stuff. You'll see, I'm not gonna say the brands, but you'll see different fast food restaurants, cups and stuff in the water and stuff. And it's one of those things where it's like, someone dropped that on the ground and got washed into the ocean because that person didn't care. And then what happens then, that plastic and that material breaks down, or some of it never breaks down, but it's stuck in the ocean, and then the animals eat that, and then they die. Or you look at the ocean as it warms up, the currents get stronger. And if people want to know about the weather and climate change, the weather systems are changing. And so 20 years ago, when we were sailing on the ocean, we would get storm systems that would come through, and they were pretty consistent weather patterns. We knew hurricane season we'll start off with tropical depressions, and then hurricane, then tropical depression, and then it's done. Now we're getting tropical depressions in the winter. I mean, stuff like that is just bizarre. And so I get to experience, unfortunately, climate change at the most extreme because I'm in the most extreme environment, the ocean. And so one of my things has been simply, what can I do to help protect the oceans? Well, the first obvious thing is cut back on fossil fuels, because fossil fuels not only doesn't help me anymore because the fuel's heavy and expensive, the engines are heavy and hard to maintain, and they're dirty. And so by me removing a diesel engine off my boat and using batteries and using electric motors to charge the batteries and stuff, I'm able to not only help the environment, but my performance goes up. I haven't had an engine on a boat I've restored in years because I don't need them anymore. And so we charge our batteries using hydro generators, which are pretty much propellers underwater. So as the sailboat's moving with the wind, the boat's creating motion, the propellers turn underwater, thus you have a water turbine. When the boat's sailing, the wind's blowing, so we have a wind turbine. So you're getting wind power as well. Then, about 60% of the time, it's sunny outside on the ocean. So we have solar panels, and that gives us sunlight. So we have systems, a diverse system that allows us to power a boat. And let's say, like, if all you have is a diesel engine, and the diesel engine dies, well, your race is over because it's the only power system you have. But if you have 4 or 5 systems, and let's say you have a biodiesel on board, you have 4 systems on board. So if one dies, you still can power your boat. And I've been on trips where my power systems have died. I had to hand steer for 4.5 days. That's not fun. And so it's one of those things where, the last example I'll give to answer your first question, competitively, there's a race that just finished called the Vendée Globe, which is a solo around the world race. It happens every 4 years. I'll be in the 2024 race coming up. 5 of the boats had to quit the race because they hit debris in the water. So just imagine if you have a $7 million boat, your sponsor, a multinational sponsor, they put all this money in, you have 4 years of buildup, you're a third of the way around the world, and then you hit a trash can or a tree trunk, and you damage the bottom of your boat. Now you got to pull out the race. And that whole 4 years has been wasted, all because someone just dumped trash off a boat or off land.
Wow.
And so, it's quite depressing when you think about the damage we've done. But I do have hope. I do believe that, between the new administration and some of the initiatives they're doing, that they're trying to make a dent and try to slow down on the destruction we're causing. And for anyone out there at this stage, if you still think human beings are not contributing to climate change, very simple experiment. It's very easy to do. If you have a car, an extra bedroom in your house, all you got to do is take a plant, your favorite pet, your favorite child. I should say this. Don't do this, people. I know a lot of dumb people in the world. Don't do this. But if you chose to do this, take a plant, your favorite child, and your grandmother, put them in a room, take a hose from your car, and put the hose in the car into the room. Anything's going to happen. The CO2 level is going to kill them.
Yeah.
Now, I've had people say to me one time before, hey, well, the car gives off more CO2 than the square footage of my room. Okay, fine. Take a lawnmower or get a filter, reduce the CO2 particles down to the proper amount, and do the same thing. Or do you want to sit in the room and do that? People actually kill themselves by sitting in their garage starting their cars. And so if you think for a second CO2 is not damaging our atmosphere, I don't know what to say to you. And so, of course, the Earth has cycles. Everything has a cycle. But our actions are speeding up the cycle. And so, it's one of those things where people get lazy. They make it very political for different reasons. Maybe who knows what it is. But I think everyone's intelligent enough to know if you sit in the garage with your car on, you will die from asphyxiation. And that's what we're doing to the planet.
Yeah, I think that was probably the best explanation I've ever heard. Not so much that it's not or it isn't happening, but we're speeding up the cycles. And that cannot be good because those cycles are supposed to last thousands and thousands of years, not 1,000 years. And then we go to another one and so on and so forth. And, at this point, we only got one Earth. So we got to take care of it. I mean, until we pioneer Mars, and that's a little bit of ways. That's like another 20 years. We definitely got to take care of it, and it's important. But these are the conversations that we should be having more of, and people should be listening more. But everybody, cares more about what their side agrees on. But listen, science doesn't lie.
Yeah.
It has facts and it has proof. It has data, right?
Yeah, Yeah. So think about that. So you talk to people, and again, I do talks like this all the time. So I've heard it all, and I have rebuttals for all of it. So someone will say to me, "Science is not always right." I'll say, "Okay, well," I'll say, "Well, your mom's not always right, nor is your dad, nor is your pastor of your church, nor are you." I said, "So science is based on people who are specialists who study these different phenomena." So now I'll ask a person, "What do you do for a living?" Oh, let's say they're a basketball player. Okay, you're a basketball player. You know the proper technique for shooting a basketball, right? Yes. You know the proper technique for dribbling a basketball, right? Yeah. How would you like someone to come and tell you that you're doing it wrong? And you're supposed to do like this the entire time, and that's all you can do. Well, they'll be like, "Well, no, that's not right because I know the proper way of doing it." Well, these scientists are saying the same thing. They're saying to you that, hey, we're going to destroy the planet in the next 100 years. Well, if it's 80 years, does it matter if it's 20 years short? The whole point is that we're killing the planet. So at the end of the day, do something about it and stop making excuses.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, even if it's 120 or 200, I mean, they're going to be right in some
Right.
capacity, right? We're not taking care
Yeah.
of the place we live. I think the best one that you said was like coming to your office and it being filthy every day. I mean, that's got to be
Yeah.
brutal. Or, having, what was it, a $7 million machine getting broken because it hit some
Yeah.
debris, or spending 4 years training for a competition
Yeah.
and now it's wasted because of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we got to start highlighting this more, and it's got to come to the forefront. Without getting too political, I am happy that this administration at least values some of these things.
Yes.
And hopefully, they could be important, but hopefully, we don't lose sight of it if someone else comes into comes into office. We need to make it
Yeah.
like a consistent thing.
Priority.
Yeah, throughout the whole thing. I mean, I think I read an article
Yeah.
about that you were talking about that Biden got back involved with. I might be mistaken, but with the French Accord of making sure
Yeah.
we're taking
Yes.
care of the world a little bit better. So we definitely got to be starting to look at this a little bit more. Man, dude, you got gems all over the place. I want to switch gears a little bit more. I know you're probably pressed for time. You got so much knowledge. We're probably gonna have to get you on here again. But I wanted to ask you. So I might be saying it wrong. You said, is it double? Let me preface it this way. Have you seen the movie Tenet with
Yes.
David Washington?
Absolutely.
Right. So is that the boat that you based on? Right, the one that the guy got cut off, fell off the boat.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. All right. So first.
Yeah, tell me.
First, that was a great movie, by the way. I love that movie. It's almost as good as Inception. But
wow.
All right. So that boat right there is called an AC-45. That was a boat that was used for the America's Cup about 6 years ago. Those boats are called catamarans. They're two hulls. They're designed. These particular ones are designed to fly above the water. So what that does, it reduces the resistance. Because when you're dragging the water, that's resistance. If you're flying with a foil, you have less drag in the water. Those boats are really cool. I raced and won 2 championships on similar boats. Our boat was only 33 feet long compared to those being 45 feet long. For the round the world record, I will either use a boat very similar to that, or I'll be using a monohull, which is a single hull boat. This will be determined by the partners that we have and when they come on board, so we know what their appetite is, I would say. But I prefer those kind of boats, high performance multi-hull boats, because they're faster, they're more stable, and also I've been very successful racing them.
That boat, does it go over 40 knots, or is that like that 40 knots is the fastest any boat would go? Because you're saying if it's flying, that thing's got to fly, literally. Yeah. Like the speed's got to be crazy.
So the record, yes. So the world record over the course of a mile is held by Paul Larson, American, by the way. I think he has 65, 68 knots under sail. Wow. That particular boat you saw there, the record's about 50.1, I believe, for AC-45. The fastest I've ever gone is 37 knots. And so I'm a couple knots, maybe 13 below that. But the average sailboat in most races, they generally hover around 25. 25 is generally because it's really hard to maintain those kind of speeds for a long period of time. Because if you think about it from the standpoint, every mile you travel, the wind shifts basically, and so um, once that shift happens, you're going to slow down automatically, or you have to adjust your course to maintain the angle that you have and the balance you have. And so most of the time, I think the 24-hour record right now is so the fastest 24 hours trip, I believe, is about 900 miles. And it was done by a crew, 135-foot trimaran called Bank Blair at the time, Pascal Belligori. I think they averaged like 35 knots over 24 hours, which is insane.
Yeah, that's
That's
crazy.
really, really fast.
That thing that David Washington is doing when he's like look like he's paddling with his hands. What is that doing to the boat?
Yeah. Yes. So that's called a pedestal grinder. And so what you normally have two people per grinder, and those grinders are hooked up to the winches. So you'll see them wrap ropes around a drum. Those are called winches. And on large boats, high performance boats, you use the grinder to get that rope to turn fast. And as the rope turns, the sails tighten up. And so what happens, depending on the wind angle and your speed, you want to sail out a certain angle. So if you take your hand like this, my hand on the camera, like this, and if the wind's blowing really light, you want to open your sails up a little bit so you can cup the air better. Now, when you start picking up speed, and picture this as a bicycler. When you ride a bicycle, when you're sitting still, the wind's hitting you in the back of your head because the wind's blowing behind you. When you start pedaling your bike, the wind starts hitting you in your face. Your motion is creating wind. It's called apparent wind. And so on sailboats, it's the same thing. As you start going faster and faster, the wind starts shifting behind you, if you will, to the side of you. And maybe sometimes if you're really good, a little bit forward of the beam in front of you. And what happens, you have to tighten your sails up more and flatten them out more as you do it, because all a sail really is a wing. And so you picture a sailboat now and think of it as an airplane on the water, because all you're doing is taking the wing off of, I hate to say Boeing at this point, but a wing off an Airbus. And you're putting a vertical on a sailboat. That's what you're doing at this point.
And that's how you create basically the inertia to steer and move forward.
Exactly. So again, not to be too nerdy, but on the backside of the sail.
Mm-hmm.
All right, cool. All right. So I used to teach this. I love teaching. So what you have is this: if you take your hand and you look at the inside of your hand, the distance from your thumb to your pinky is shorter distance than it is from your thumb on the backhand of your hand to your pinky. That distance is further away, and so what happens when the sail's going through the water, the wind has to accelerate around the longer distance on the backhand of your hand to catch up with the wind on the smaller side of your hand. And what happens, that acceleration creates that forward push. And so I think it's Archimedes. I can't think who it was. I think maybe it's Archimedes. So that's the push and pull thing, where you have, as the wind's coming through, it's forcing you forward. So picture it like this: wind coming this way, it's going to pull you that way. And so that's when you look at airplane wings. It's the same thing. Airplane wings, the wing is a bubble. The bottom part's flat, the top part's curved. And so what happens, the wind has to accelerate to catch up with the wind that's being separated. And that produces your lift.
No, that's pretty awesome. I think I've seen that same boat in another film, the Thomas Crown Affair, and he ends up crashing it. I just wanted to ask, how much does one of those boats go for? Is that another $7 million boat?
Oh my goodness! Yeah. So AC-45, when they first built them, were about $4 or $5 million, and they're really complicated boats to operate because they have a solid wing sail. And so if he crashed that boat, I'm sure he didn't have insurance, because the insurance company is not going to pay you back for that if you did that on purpose. So it's one of those things where these kind of boats can be very expensive. The high-end multi-hulls out there, like Rothschild, those guys with Chitana, their boats are probably about $15, $20 million trimaran. But you won't see a lot of those in America, because most of our racing here is confined to more coastal racing, where the Europeans, they do a lot of more global racing, so they require bigger, more powerful boats. What we're going to do is get a boat very similar to that. Won't be nearly as expensive. In fact, our boat probably costs as much as two of the crew salaries, probably. But
Wow.
the point is that the boat itself can do a similar job, and that's the goal.
One more boat movie reference, and then we'll talk about the race and start wrapping things up. Is this the style of boat that was in Waterworld?
Go ahead.
In Waterworld, it's almost similar to the.
Yes.
Boat,
Oh,
right?
look at you. All right.
See, I'm telling you, bro. I got.
No, so we're showing our age now, aren't we? Okay. All right. So So now since you went there, let me explain for the young kids who've not seen Waterworld yet. There's a unique actor named Kevin Costner, and he's a survivor in a post world, whatever you call it. And he's on board a boat called Trimaran. Now that Trimaran. Yeah, thank you. He's on board a Trimaran. This Trimaran actually was a real race boat. It was called Promaga, actually, and it was used over in France for the Route de Rome race across the Atlantic. And they took the boat and they made it to a futuristic, worn-out version of it. And they had guys down below inside the boat actually grinding and doing the sailing for him. But they made it seem like he was doing it. An American bought that boat and started using it right after that movie was over. And I think he sold it about 12 years ago to somebody else. But yes, that's a trimaran. That's my passion. Those are the kind of boats I sail on majority of the time. And depending on, again, the sponsorship situation we're working on right now, I will either use a boat like that, which is extremely fast, and I'll come back to that in a second, or I'll use a single hull boat, which is called a monohull, which you traditionally see out in the ocean. Now, the cool thing about a trimaran is that it's basically a monohull minus the safety device we call a keel. Now, under a monohull, you'll have a big blade lead on it, and the lead keeps the boat from tipping over when the wind hits it. So what the trimaran does, actually the Polynesians, the ancient Polynesians, they're the one who created catamarans and trimarans, by the way, when they first started taking logs, and they would put the logs on the side, and they would put a main canoe in the middle. And what they would do, it'll help balance the boat when the wind blows. So as long as the boat is balanced, you can go really fast. And so if you look at my videos on my Facebook page and stuff, you'll see me on tons of boats doing 15, 20 knots of speed with like no sails up. It's just me and two other people, and we're flying because the boat is designed to fly. And so most, if not all, record-breaking boats today are built as trimarans. There hasn't been a record-breaking catamaran built in almost 20 years, I think. And the only record-breaking monohull that's been built was Comanche. I think that was like 8-9 years ago. That was the last one. So yeah, trimarans are really the way of the future. The U.S. Navy even built a boat, the trimaran, on the Freedom class, I think it's called. And so so Waterworld, if Waterworld ever happened, I will probably Kevin Costner with my wife, and we will be fine.
So there was some truth to that thing. So you see, by accident,
Absolutely.
I know a little bit about sailing. Thank you, Hollywood.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Like I said, I know you're tight for time. I want to touch on. So you were talking about this is a style of boat that you would use. I had a question before we talk a little bit more about the race. When you start to set on this mission that I think is amazing, do you do stops? Or I mean, there's no way to sail around the world straight, right? Like how does the race go?
Good question.
Talk to us about that a little bit, because people got to eat and sleep, man.
Yeah, so it's almost like you're actually a sailor as you're talking, because your questions are really good. Wow.
Thank you, bro. I did my homework, man.
There it is. Okay, now with you. I was like, cool. I'm like, that's a good question. All right. So sailing, like every sport, has rules. Okay? And so today, Dustin, if you chose to right now, you could hop on the boat and go and sail around the world. And you can come back home when you're done and you had a great trip. But that trip would not qualify as a record, and because there's rules that qualify. So there's 3 categories that determine all records. The first one is the size of the boat. So there's 3 categories. Size 0, well, not really 0, but 24 to 40 feet is class 3. 40 feet to 60 feet is class 2. That's us, class 2. And then you have 61 feet to whatever size you want. That's unlimited range. That's I mentioned the French. That's what they do, unlimited range stuff. Okay, so that's category one, limit. Second category is then what type of crew you have aboard. Is it a full crew of 10 people, or is it a single person? Is that person male or is it female? Those are the crew. And in my case, it's single-handed, I'm a male. Okay. The last category then is the type of record you're doing. Are you doing a record non-stop or with stops? And this is where the specification comes in. So I mentioned there was two brothers in the past in 89 and 91 who went around the world by themselves. The first gentleman, Teddy Seymour, went around the world and he went through the canals, Panama Canal, then went to the Suez Canal in the Middle East, and then came back to the Mediterranean back home. So he's officially the first African American to sail around the world solo. 2 years later, Captain Bill Pinkney of Chicago, he comes out and says, well, I'm going to up the ante. I'm going to go around the world, but I'm going to go the traditional record route. He didn't do it as a record, he just did it as a voyage. And he went around the world from, I believe it was Bermuda, I think it was. Oh no, Boston. It was from Boston, and he went around the world, came back to Boston. Both gentlemen stopped multiple times on their journey. So their trip was more, for a lesser term, a cruise. It was a long distance cruise broken into sections. And so they go in the record book for their journeys, for completing their journeys, but not as world records. So now the table's set. Now here's where we are. My responsibility, my job, is to go around the planet nonstop. And so that's how professional records are done. You start from a destination and you finish back at the same destination as quickly as you can. So each category, 24 to 40, 40, 60, and 60 to unlimited, has their own benchmark. So for the unlimited crew, so unlimited around the world, it sits at 43 days by Francis Gabar or Massif. His boat was 125 feet long. In category 2, the current record, world record, is at 74 days. The American record in that same category is 107 days. And so those are my targets. The 74 day for the world and 107 as an American. And so when I depart, whether it's from, there's 3 destinations we possibly depart from. One's New York, one's San Francisco, and one's Hawaii. Depending on where we depart from, the goal was to get around the planet faster than anyone's ever done it before. And if I miss the world record, at least I'll have the American record, and I'll have a cultural record being the first African American to do it. So hopefully that was clear. I know it's a lot of information there.
No. I'm sharp. I like that. Okay, so we're basically doing the second class basically, and you have 3 opportunities to hit a mark, right? And the 72 day mark, or 72 day mark. If you break that, you'd have to come. That would shatter everything. You wouldn't have to do it anymore. But then you
everything. So exactly. So aim for the big fish. Aim for the big record. And if I finish 1 hour better than the person who did it before, that's good enough. So all that matters is you win by 1 point.
Is it based on an honor system, or is someone like timing you? Like, you know?
No. There is a council that monitors your entire thing.
Yeah. Okay.
And nowadays, so not just the council. Nowadays, there are civilians, people watching you all the time. So just like when I start this record, you'll be able to take your cell phone every day. And every 15 minutes, you're going to know where I'm at. Yeah. Right. And so everyone's tracking everything. The council, they track your start and your finish. They put a black box onto your boat that monitors your location the entire time. And sometimes you have to also check in at certain waypoints. And so it's so hard. There is a tragic story I'm not going to tell right now, but there's a tragic story of a guy who actually did cheat, and he got caught cheating. And he committed suicide at sea because he didn't want to come home and face the music for cheating. So that was back in 1960, like 69, I think it was. But having said that, the council governs everything. Like the Guinness Book of World Records, which is we normally hear about, is not this. This is like the NBA of basketball. This is the official council. But by breaking the council's records, you also get to qualify for the Guinness World Records as well. So by the end of this trip, I potentially could have 12 world records in my possession.
Nice.
Just by completing the record.
And this is the race in 2024, or when are you attempting this? 2024, right?
Right. So excellent. Right. So to answer your question, so what you have, we have some dates coming up that we're going to announce, kind of as a press conference, kind of a big announcement. So we're not going to give the dates out at this very second when the record departure is, but it will be in the coming months. The Around the World record in 2024, the Vendée Globe, that's the world champion. That's the Formula One World Championship for the same thing. So I get to race in a fleet to win a race. I also get to compete for the record on my own. And so the racing and record conversation is a unique one because a race has a start date. I can tell you for a fact, November 12th, 2024, this race starts. Oh, actually, sorry, November 4th this time. November 4th of 2024, the Vendée Globe starts. So that's set in stone. If the weather's bad, if there's no wind,
Doesn't matter. We're racing.
We're going to drift for 3 or 4 days. Doesn't matter. But that's the restart. And so, for example, the race has just finished this week. This race had faster boats than 4 years ago in 2016, but they fell short of breaking the race record because they started in worse weather. So when you race, the record doesn't matter. It matters winning the race. Now, when you depart for a record, you depart. This is the Mr. Miyagi thing again. You depart at the right time to maximize your opportunities to break your record. And so I won't leave if there's no wind. I won't leave if there's a hurricane out there. I will wait until the wind's at the proper angle. I'll try to forecast 72 hours out or more and try to get the best start possible so that I can finish at a good time.
Dude, that's so awesome. I'm so stoked. That way, I'm just a little sad we got to wait a few years for it, but man, that's amazing. Like I said, we're gonna.
No. The record will probably be sooner.
Really?
Yeah, the record. The record will be way sooner. So the record will probably be within the next. I'm just going to give a range on purpose. Next 18 months.
Okay, that's fair. That's good.
The Vendée Globe is actually November of 2024. The race itself is 2024. And so only 35 guys and girls get to race in that race. So it's first come, first serve qualification for that. But the record itself, stay tuned. That's coming soon.
I can't wait, man. Good luck, bro. I like it. I like it when people set goals so high that it seems crazy to even try. But, God bless, man.
Yeah.
So like I said, we're going to wrap up things here in just a sec. I wanted to really talk to you one more thing. I don't know if you started a foundation, but I know you work with a lot of up-and-coming young sailors. If you could talk to me a little bit about that and where people can get more information about that. And if there's people that are interested in sailing, I'm sure there's no age gap on sailing. So if they wanted to find out more about your foundation, tell me a little bit about it.
Yes. So officially, I don't have a foundation, and that's on purpose. The reason why is because I want to support foundations that already exist. Because I care about a lot of different topics, as we've talked about today, whether it's environmental, education, minorities, diversity, all that stuff. And so I'm aligned with about 7 nonprofits that focus on specific things. And my goal is to help them raise funding and education for each of these things. And so when you go on my Facebook page, you'll see a list of all the nonprofits I support and what I do with them. You'll see pictures and articles related to that. As far as education and getting into sailing itself, if a person wants to get involved in sailing, the right place to go is U.S. Sailing. U.S. Sailing is literally the governing body of sailing for this country. I happen to be a committee member for diversity and inclusion. I also happen to be a part of the board of directors task force. And so I have my hands in a lot of different things with the Hall of Fame and other stuff, trying to diversify the sport and increase participation in it. One of the things we talk about a lot in U.S. Sailing is we understand that for the sport to grow and be sustainable, we have to diversify. We have to have it so kids coming up see this opportunity to compete in the Olympics, compete like I'm doing with records. And the only way they're going to do that is if someone goes to them and tells them, hey, there's an opportunity to do this sport. For example, a part of my motivation for working with U.S. Sailing is I didn't know sailing was in the Olympics. Didn't know. There was no way for me to know this as a child. If I had known at 9 years old that Olympics was an option, I would have been out there for about a decade or two racing in the Olympics and stuff. But so my goal is not to have another kid go through that life regret, if you will. So what we're doing is we're doing a lot of initiatives to promote, hey kids, this is a sport that you can do, this is a sport you can participate in, and we want you to participate in it. And so I've been working on education programs like this since 2000. And we've had a lot of minorities, young girls and men, going out there, and they've gotten careers now. Some of them are boat captains themselves. Some work on water taxis and cruise ships, and some went to the military and stuff. And so I'm very proud of the work that I've been doing with that, because at the end of the day, I know I'm going to retire one day. I'm going to be done, and my wife and I are going to cruise the world. We're going to enjoy ourselves. But there's going to be some kid come along who sees everything I've ever done and undo all of it and break all my records. And I'm going to be cheering for that kid, because that's the whole point. When I'm retired, it doesn't matter anymore. I won when I was supposed to win. But when I'm retired, I hope some kid comes along and she says, you know what? I'll do everything he did. And I'm going to cheer her on and say, hey, you're lucky I'm retired, you're lucky I'm old. But since I am, by all means, go for it and have a good time.
Thank God. Like I said, man, I'm excited that we got an ambassador like yourself in the sport to help merge the gap of some of the individuals that are not as fortunate as some of the others. If you want to give a shout out to any sponsors or that have helped you along the way, or that you're looking out to reach for, and some of your social media handles, so people know how to get in contact with you if they're interested, or if they just want to watch you fly on the sea, man, let me know.
Cool. Well, I actually have 2 social media pages that I use that I enjoy. First, but
No. Go ahead, finish up, Donald, and then I'll get you Scott in a second. All good. Well, don't worry about it.
Gotcha. Yeah. So I have 2 social media pages that people can follow us on. My Facebook page is capt.lawson, and you can join, like the page. I post most of my stuff, videos, interviews, articles on there, because it's a good template to use. It's very simple to follow. I also have an Instagram page under the same name, capt.lawson. I post a lot more pictures there, and I post a lot more of my stories. So you'll see me actually out there on the water a lot more on the Instagram story than you'll probably see on Facebook. But so Instagram, Facebook. Anyone professionally who wants to connect and see my resume and stuff, you go to LinkedIn, capt.lawson as well. Check that out. And then from there, just quick shout out, some thank yous. I'm partnering with a number of nonprofits. So I think LCV, which is the League of Conservation Voters, for their support. They've been there with me for day one, helping push my clean energy initiative. I have Scott Marshall and the guys at Sports Management Worldwide. They've been there for me, and I appreciate their support. I have the guys at Whitecap, the UK, Simon Clay, and those guys who are helping us trying to get to the finish line for this project and for the Vendée Globe. Shout out to Bruce Schwab, of course, Ocean Planet Energy, for mentoring and being there for me. And then some other folks like Marcus DeSanti, my family, especially my wife, because if you guys are married, you guys know how it works. If your wife ain't backing you, it's really hard to achieve your goals. So my wife has been my rock and my supporter, and I got lucky. And a side note, just fun story for you. I met her when I was 13 years old. Okay, and the moment I saw her, I knew I met my future wife. And I told my mother. My mother picked me up from the library. And I told my Mom, I just met my future wife. My mother laughed, of course, because I'm 13 years old, right? She said, of course, sure you did. But again, my personality, if I see something I want, I'm going to go get it. So I know she'll kill me if she watches this, but that's the truth. I stalked her, harassed her until she said yes, and then now she's stuck with me. And so
That's a great lesson for us to definitely take away also from all the gems that you provided with us, Donald. If you want something, go get it.